It really feels like every single second we're just creating this enormous trail of digital information. Every click, every connection, it all leaves a mark, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. An invisible trail. And when something goes sideways in that digital world, maybe just a small glitch or, something serious, like a security breach, trying to figure out what actually happened, it can feel impossible with all that data.
Right, like finding a needle in a haystack the size of a planet. So how do the pros, the cybersecurity folks, or really anyone investigating, how do they actually make sense of it all? How do they piece together the story?
Well, it's exactly where digital investigation comes in, and it's totally reliant on understanding and actually using these specific types of data that systems are constantly generating.
Okay, so these data types, they're like clues.
Think of them like digital footprints or, timestamps, breadcrumbs, sometimes even like recordings of the conversations that devices have. They log the activity, and the skill is knowing where to look, what to listen for.
And that's what we're doing in this deep dive, right? We've got source material that basically acts as a guide to the key data sources that cyber pros use constantly to investigate and protect things.
Exactly. We're going to unpack things like logs, these detailed record files, and system checks called vulnerability scans. We'll look at how all this info gets summarized in reports and dashboards, and yeah, even how you can capture the actual data flying across the network.
That last one sounds pretty technical. Packet captures.
It can seem that way, but we'll break it down. It's actually incredibly powerful when you understand why you'd use it.
Okay, cool. So let's pull back that digital curtain. We'll chat through these data sources, and hopefully you listening will get some real aha moments about all this hidden information out there. All right, so diving into our source material, the first big one it highlights is logs. You hear that term all the time. What exactly are log files, and why are they the first stop for investigators?
Okay, so logs. At its heart, a log file is just a record of events. Think of it like a system's diary, maybe. It automatically writes down things that happen. And reading that diary gives you insight into patterns, helps you spot weird stuff, anomalies. And yeah, they're absolutely crucial for finding security breaches. If something happened, odds are some log somewhere recorded it.
Gotcha. So it's the witness, the thing that saw everything.
Pretty much. And like witnesses, there are different kinds of logs, each focusing on a specific area. Our sources point out a few really key ones.
Like firewall logs. That sounds important, like it's guarding the main door.
That's a perfect analogy. Firewall logs are basically the bouncer's notes. They track who tried to come in or go out of the network. They log the traffic source, destination IPs, ports, protocols.
And firewalls have rules, right?
Yeah.
Like a guest list. They usually block everything unless you specifically say, let this through.
Exactly. The default is almost always deny all. You explicitly allow things you need, like web traffic on port 80, maybe email on port 25. And the source mentions how analyzing these logs lets you spot traffic hitting those deny rules. Maybe someone trying to get in from the outside on, say, port 139.
Oh, right. 139 and 445, too. Those are for internal stuff like file sharing, NetBIOS, SMB. Why is blocking those externally such a big deal?
Good question. So protocols like NetBIOS and SMB, they were really designed for trusted internal networks. They weren't built with hostile internet connections in mind. Historically, they've had vulnerabilities.
Oh.
Yeah, vulnerabilities that attackers just love to poke at from the outside. So if you leave those ports open to the internet, it's kind of like leaving your back door unlocked. Seeing attempts to connect on those ports in your firewall logs, that's a big red flag. Definitely suspicious.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just any denied traffic, it's knowing which denied traffic is really bad news.
Yeah.
Got it. So that's the perimeter. What about inside, like specific software?
Right. That's where application logs come into play. Think of these as the diary for just one specific program. It records what users do in that app, any errors the app encounters, specific events just for that software. Super helpful for troubleshooting or finding issues within one application.
And endpoint logs. That sounds like it's on my actual computer or phone.
Spot on. Endpoint logs come from the individual devices, laptops, desktops, servers, phones. They track user actions, system changes, security stuff on that specific machine. And the source highlights DNS logs here.
DNS, domain name system.
Yeah, the logs that show which websites the device looked up. And the source says these can record every single website visited by that user or device.
Wait, every site? That's a lot.
It is, but incredibly valuable if you're investigating suspicious browsing or maybe think a machine's been compromised and is calling out to weird places. It's a very detailed trail.
Okay, wow. And Windows logs. I feel like Windows is always logging something.
Oh, Windows is definitely chatty. It generates a whole bunch of logs. You've got event logs, kind of like the system's pulse startups, shutdowns, basic stuff. Then the big one for security. Security logs.
Right.
These track failed logins, successful logins, changes to permissions, who accessed what file. If someone's trying to guess passwords or messing with accounts, the security log is where you'll likely see it. Very, very important.
And system logs.
System logs are more about the OS itself, hardware problems, driver issues, things acting up at the operating system level. And of course, you have similar logs for Mac OS, Linux, other operating systems doing comparable jobs.
So security logs who did what? Access stuff? System logs is the OS healthy.
That's a pretty good way to sum it up, yeah.
Okay. And then there are IPS-IDs logs, intrusion, not systems.
Correct. Intrusion detection systems, or intrusion prevention systems. These are specialized tools watching network traffic, actively looking for patterns that match known attacks or just look really suspicious. They generate logs when they spot something potentially malicious in real time. Network logs, more generally, just track the flow, who's talking to who, connections made or dropped, errors. Useful for spotting data leaving when it shouldn't, for example.
Okay, this next one sounds fascinating. Metadata. A source says it's info about the info.
Yes, exactly. It's the context, the who, what, when, where for a digital file or action. Think file properties.
Yeah.
Who created it? When was it last modified? When was it last even looked at?
Wow.
The source gives this really relatable example. Imagine someone hands in a report late. You could potentially look at the file's metadata, the timestamps, to see, well, did they actually work on it before the deadline? You check the creation date, last modified date, maybe the last access date.
Huh. That is clever. Sneaky, but clever. It's like hidden notes. But wait, the source mentioned a catch with metadata, right? Something about losing it.
Yes, that's a critical point for investigators. You often lose the original metadata, like that crucial creation date or last access time if the file gets copied or printed or deleted.
Oh.
Yeah, those actions create a new version or destroy the original context. So that valuable history can just vanish. It's a real challenge.
It's fascinating and kind of frustrating. Okay, so we've got this whole family of logs. Firewalls at the gate, apps keeping their own notes, endpoints watching the devices, Windows detailing OS and security stuff, network gear watching the flow, and metadata adding context. Each one tells a different part of the story.
Absolutely. And just knowing these different types exist, roughly what they contain and where you might find them, that's a huge first step in any kind of digital investigation. It's foundational knowledge.
Okay, so logs give us that super detailed event-by-event record, the diary entries. But you mentioned needing a bigger picture sometimes, right? Like understanding the overall security health or finding weak spots before something bad happens. What else do investigators use?
Definitely. You can't just react to logs all the time. You need to be proactive. And a huge part of that is using vulnerability scans. Think of these like a system health checkup, a security audit.
Like a doctor systematically checking for potential issues.
Exactly like that. These scans automatically probe systems, networks, applications, looking for known weaknesses, stuff attackers look for.
Like what kind of weaknesses?
Things like outdated software with known security holes, maybe servers configured incorrectly, missing security patches, basically any known flaw that could be exploited.
And what do these scans tell you? What's the output?
They give you a list of vulnerabilities they found. Crucially, they usually rate how severe each weakness is so you know what to fix first. They help you prioritize. And doing them regularly helps you track your security posture over time, find the holes before the attackers do.
Makes sense. Now, the source mentioned two main flavors of these scans, credentialed and non-credentialed. What's the difference there? Why two types?
Okay, think about inspecting a house for problems. A credentialed scan is like having the keys to the house. You log in.
You use a username and password.
Exactly. You provide credentials. This lets the scanner get inside the system. It can look at installed software versions directly, check file permissions, read configuration files, peek into the registry on Windows.
So it sees way more detail, like walking through all the rooms.
Precisely. Because it has that internal access, a credentialed scan gives a much more detailed, much more accurate picture of the vulnerabilities. It's way better at finding missing patches, checking user account settings, and it usually has fewer false positives, fewer false alarms because it sees the full context. Tools like Nessus, the source mentions, can do this.
Okay, so non-credentialed. That's the opposite, like just looking at the house from the street.
That's a perfect analogy. A non-credentialed scan doesn't log in. It probes the system from the outside, just seeing what's visible externally. It acts like an attacker who doesn't have any login details.
So what's that useful for? Seeing what the bad guys see first.
Exactly. It's great for assessing your external footprint, what ports are open to the internet, what services are listening. It's usually faster than a credentialed scan, good for quick checks. And it simulates what an external attacker, or maybe a third-party tester, would find initially. Nessus can do these too, by the way.
Got it. So same goal, find weaknesses, but totally different perspectives. One from the inside, one from the outside, both useful.
Correct. You often use both to get the complete picture.
Okay, so we've got logs for the detailed history, scans for finding weak spots. Now, you collect all this stuff, logs, scan results, especially in big companies. There's just tons of it. How do security teams actually present this, especially to managers or people who aren't deep in the tech weeds?
Yeah, that's a huge challenge. Turning mountains of raw data into something people can actually understand and act on, that's where automated reports and dashboards are key.
Automated reports, like summaries.
Basically, yes. They take the complex output from logs, scans, other security tools, and boil it down into digestible formats. Think regular summaries of security status, lists of critical issues, maybe compliance tracking reports.
And the automated part is important.
Hugely. It gives real-time or near real-time insights without someone having to manually compile everything. It saves security teams a ton of time and effort, freeing them up to actually fix things or investigate threats.
Okay, and dashboards. I'm picturing those command center screens from movies, all graphs and flashing lights.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty much the idea. Dashboards are visual interfaces. They display key security information events, alerts, system status, vulnerability trends in real time using charts, graphs, maps, gauges.
Why is the visual part so important?
Because our brains process visual information really quickly. You can spot a spike, a weird trend, or a critical alert on a dashboard almost instantly. Something that might take hours to find scrolling through raw text logs.
Ah, makes sense. Faster pattern recognition.
Exactly. They make real-time monitoring much easier, help you spot anomalies fast, and they can often be customized. So an analyst might see detailed threat data, while a manager sees a high-level overview of risk posture. They make complex data accessible.
Right. So logs the diary, scans the health check, reports and dashboards the summary and the command center view. Okay, that covers the records of things and the assessment of things. But you mentioned something even deeper, looking at the actual data flowing on the network. How does that work?
Ah, yes, packet captures. This is where you get really granular. It means literally capturing the individual units of data, the packets, as they travel across the network cables or Wi-Fi.
You're actually grabbing the packets themselves.
Yep. You use tools called packet sniffers or protocol analyzers. The source specifically mentions Wireshark and TCP dump, which are very common. These tools listen to the network traffic and save what they capture, usually in a special file format called PCP, so you can analyze it later.
Okay, but why? Give me an example. How does seeing individual packets solve a problem?
Okay, the source has a brilliant, simple example. Let's say a user can't get an IP address from the network's DHCP server. They can't connect.
Happens all the time.
Right. Normally, getting an IP involves a specific 4-step conversation, 4 packets back and forth. Discover, offer, request, acknowledge, DORA, raw. If you run a packet capture on the user's machine and you only see the first packet, the discover, going out, but you never see the offer packet coming back from the server?
Then the server isn't answering.
Exactly. You know instantly the problem likely isn't the user's computer trying to ask or the network cable between them. The issue is probably the DHCP server itself. Maybe it's down, maybe it's out of addresses, maybe it's misconfigured. The packet capture pinpoints where that conversation broke down.
Wow, okay, that is a cool aha moment. You see the missing piece of the conversation. So besides troubleshooting, what are the big uses? Forensics.
Absolutely invaluable for forensics and incident response. After a breach, analyzing packet captures lets investigators reconstruct the entire attack sequence. Where did the attacker come from? What commands did they run? What data did they steal? The packets hold the ground truth. It's also used for really deep analysis to find stealthy threats that might slip past other tools.
And the source mentioned something about baselines, too.
Yeah, that's a common technique. You capture traffic during normal operations when everything is working fine. That's your baseline of what normal looks like.
Okay.
Then later, if things seem weird, you capture traffic again and compare it to your baseline. Anything that looks significantly different could be suspicious, maybe malicious traffic. And the source also points out packet captures are often critical digital evidence in legal cases used by law enforcement.
So the key tools are Wireshark, TCP dump, .saving data, in PCCAPI files, giving you that super, super detailed view of the actual network chatter.
Exactly. It's getting down to the bits and bytes, the fundamental level of network communication.
Okay, wow. So let's just sort of recap. We've really covered some ground here on these essential data sources. We started with logs, the detailed diaries, right? Firewall, application, endpoint, Windows, network logs, plus that crucial context from metadata.
The foundation.
And then we moved to vulnerability, scans the system, health checks, finding those weak spots, credentialed versus non-credentialed.
That proactive piece, yeah.
And then how you make sense of it all with automated reports and those visual dashboards, especially for management.
Turning data into understanding.
And finally, the really deep dive. Packet captures. Using tools like Wireshark to listen right in on the network's conversation, packet by packet.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? Understanding these sources shows just how much detail is constantly being recorded about our digital activity. And it shows how security pros use that sometimes overwhelming amount of info like puzzle pieces. They turn it into actionable knowledge to solve problems and keep things safe.
It really does. It makes you stop and think, actually. You know, considering just how much detail is captured, websites visited in DNS logs, file access times and metadata, user actions in security logs, the actual data flows and packet captures, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What kind of incredibly detailed digital story could someone piece together about your own daily activities just by looking closely at the data trails you leave behind without even thinking about it?
That is definitely something to ponder.